So the last talk for the day, and after that we're going to have the small breakout groups, is going to be Microbiology Careers in the Army by Colonel Bowden.
Thank you very much. All right, good afternoon, and thank you everyone for sticking around, and thank you Dr. cardevfor for the invitation and the committee for the invitation. I look around and I can recognize that all of you are good microbiologists. You are observing the CDC's recommendation to stay at least 6 feet apart. Those of you who aren't, I can see where the clusters are going to develop, and we'll be taking your samples for PFGE at the end of the seminar. Good afternoon. My name is Colonel Bob Bowden. I have a PhD in immunology from Texas A&M University. In addition to running a very large research program where we make vaccines and drugs against a variety of pathogens that academia and biotechnology won't make vaccines against, I'm also the microbiology consultant to the Army Surgeon General. To make this a perfect trifecta, I will also too mention H1N1 and say that I have been very, very busy in advising our Army and our DoD on all things microbiology the past couple of weeks, as you might imagine. This afternoon I'm going to talk to you about specifically careers in the Army. Yes, I'm in the Army. It's the short haircut that gives it away, I'm sure. But for some of you who might also have an interest in being a civilian who would like to work for our Army, I can actually appeal to you as well. Do I have any persons who were prior service in the military that might be in it? Great. So when I screw this up, I'm going to call on you all to help me out where I've gone wrong. But I also have some other colleagues here that are either in the Army. I can see my colleague Dr. Cybulski in the back there. So I would encourage you that Dr. Fleming, or soon to be Dr. Fleming, actually in the back, thanks for coming. Look around the room. There'll be some others that are going to help me along because I may not have all the answers. But these are some of the questions that I expect to have answered by the end of this particular talk. And I would encourage you, take a look at these and help me assess what's missing in this list. You all came here with an idea to join the military, or I'm sorry, to get a, I'll swear you in by the end, to have an idea of what possible careers there are in the military. And I would say the fun thing about being last is I can say to both of their talks, well, me too. You can do all of that stuff, but you wear the uniform as well. So everything that the two ladies described before, whether it's tech transfer or whether it's the clinical micro or the research aspects of clin micro, we do that in uniform. Those of you who might be interested in a civilian career as a microbiologist or as a scientist for our Army, I can assure you we hire all types of Army scientists throughout the actual world where we have laboratories. My best advice for you is to go to this cpol.army.mil website. That's the official site where government service positions are listed. There are other ways to access the military laboratories, whether it's Army, Navy, or Air Force, etc., but generally those are not in government service positions. This is my best advice, and now it's about all I can. I'll tell you a couple other facts beyond that as we continue. If you're going to join the Army as an Army microbiologist, you would be in the Medical Service Corps, which falls within the Army Medical Department. And this is just simply a breakout so that you have some understanding of where and how the Medical Service Corps and you as an Army microbiologist would fit within the leadership and the chain of command of our Army Medical Department. In the Medical Service Corps, we have 24 different specialties. As a microbiologist is one of those 24 specialties. And our job is to perform the clinical, which you've heard a little bit about, the scientific, whether it's basic science or applied science, administrative, as well as the leadership functions essential to accomplishing our health service missions. To qualify to be an Army microbiologist, you have to have at a minimum a master's degree in one of these various disciplines, whether it's microbiology in the classic basic sense, immunology, parasitology, virology, or molecular biology with a specialty in medical microbiology. We prefer to bring you in with a PhD in one of those various disciplines, and it just has to do with how much use and how much we can immediately put you to work on one of our various research programs. But our preference is to bring you in with a PhD. Some of you might ask, what are the requirements, or do I have to be a U.S. citizen? The answer is sort of. Only recently, within literally probably the last 8 months, there have been some changes in the recruiting strategies that you don't necessarily have to be a citizen. There's a way forward on that, but you don't necessarily have to be a U.S. citizen. And it just has to do with some unique needs we have in the Army. And I believe the Army microbiologists, Army biochemists qualify for that. So if this category befits you, just make sure you talk to me, let me know, and I'll put you in touch with the right people. And also recently, within the last 4 or 5 years, the age requirements have changed slightly. In fact, I was just talking to a gentleman this morning. Not only was he not a U.S. citizen, but he was concerned that he was too old. And I told him, nope, we'll take you still, because you can still serve 3, 4, 5 years. You may not get to do 20 years and have a career, but you could certainly serve 3, 5 years and enjoy not only serving your country, but also the VA benefits that come with having served your country. So he didn't know that, and he walked away very grateful. I signed him up too. So when I said me too a moment ago, I was quite serious, because in the Army, our microbiologists, we perform the clinical microbiology role at the bench, as lab directors, in hospitals and medical centers, treatment facilities, BSL-3 laboratories throughout our Army, displaced throughout the world. And many of our scientists, in fact, probably 60% of our scientists, are performing basic research at either the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is where I hail from and the research division that I lead, or the USAMRID, the Research Institute for Infectious Disease at Fort Detrick, Maryland. We have about 60% of our folks there. In fact, my 2 gentlemen here that I mentioned earlier, they're both going to be, one's going to be stationed there, one is there. And then many of our scientists are actually what we call operational microbiologists. They are stationed in places like the Aberdeen Proving Ground, where we have laboratories assigned to detect and identify pathogens either in the environment or at a site or location where they go in and detect, identify, and neutralize these pathogens. So some of our scientists actually live and work every day in developing or using these diagnostic assays that our colleagues earlier mentioned in Aberdeen and elsewhere. So as a research microbiologist, whether you're in the clinic or whether you're in the hospital, these are some general areas that we investigate. The top 2, of course, are of our primary interest of late. One wouldn't think generally that dental biomedical research is important, but if you think about the deployed soldier or the deployed personnel and what an oral biofilm, when you don't have the opportunity or proximity to good clean water, or you don't have a toothbrush, it's one of my colleagues and one of our junior scientists up in Great Lakes in Chicago created a special gum with antimicrobial peptides that we're actually testing, so to destroy those oral biofilms. So I like to put this slide up because, again, back to the Medical Service Corps, microbiologists and biochemists are 2 of the 24 different specialties within the Medical Service Corps, and this particular slide helps bring home or helps represent where it is, because you generally don't think of yourself, wow, you're a microbiologist. How do you really fit in to the big army? How are you relevant to the fight? What do you really do? And so if you think about the soldier and you think about your job and what your job is every day, whether it's to detect and identify pathogens in their clinical specimen, or whether it's to survey places in Africa or places in Thailand or elsewhere where we have laboratories and we need to do drug-resistant surveillance or drug development, this slide helps depict how and where all of our particular specialties fit in. Here's an example of if one were assigned at the USAMRID up at Fort Detrick, Maryland. This is Dr. Vanessa Melanson, working hard in her blue suit. She's a filovirus expert, and this is an example of what you could be doing. She's only been out of her research program, I believe, a little over 2 years, and she's got a couple of different various grants, and she's now on a committee to advise the DoD on our filovirus program. These are some accomplishments that many of our microbiologists over the course of their careers have contributed to the success of these accomplishments. For example, there's a phase 3 clinical trial going on in Mozambique on malaria. This particular construct was created about 25 or 26 years ago by folks I wouldn't have even known, having only been in the Army a little bit shorter than that. But because it takes 15 to 25 years from conception to FDA licensure, you can imagine that a number of us have gone through those laboratories and worked in there. But this particular vaccine in phase 3 clinical trials was created and continued to have been refined, not only by Army microbiologists, but also working with our tech transfer office, working on those CRADAs with GlaxoSmithKline, and now the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who you probably have read most of the credit going towards with respect to this particular vaccine. But that vaccine was created by Army microbiologists and Army infectious disease clinicians. We have a phase 2B clinical trial going on for dengue in Puerto Rico. The research group that I lead at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, we have 2 different platforms, a live attenuated Shigella vaccine and a subunit vaccine. They're actually presenting some of their work here at this meeting. We just finished a phase 2 clinical trial for our live attenuated work, and we just got NIH funding for a phase 1 trial for our live attenuated Shigella vaccine. The Neisseria meningitis group, which is also part of the division I lead, we just finished a Group B phase 1 clinical trial very successfully. We'll be publishing that very soon. We have a phase 3, the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research is a very large institution. We have the largest HIV research program and HIV repository. We have a phase 3 vaccine trial, which is about to be unblinded. The data is about to be unblinded. That clinical trial took place in Thailand. We're very excited about that data. The Yersinia pestis F1V vaccine was created by a gentleman who's actually at this meeting when he had just finished his PhD. He was a captain, and he and one of our other colleagues that's also was formerly an Army scientist created this vaccine, and just last year it was selected to be the construct to go forward for full-scale production to protect our troops. So this is a good story that not only he came in just after his PhD, did his first assignment, his job was to create this construct, and over the course of the next 20 years, that construct went through a various litany of refinements and tests, preclinical, clinical, CRADAs, etc., and now it's actually gone to full production. So there's a good news story. All of the anti-malarial drugs that are on the market were discovered and initially identified and discovered and characterized by Army military scientists. We actually, so leishmania, many of you might have heard, was a bit of a problem at the early start of our current 2 conflicts that we're involved in. We've seemed to have gotten that under control, but we actually have continued our investigations for a topical treatment for leishmania. There's a phase 3 clinical trial going on in Tunisia, led by one of our Army microbiologists as well. So this slide depicts a couple of good examples of some clinical assignments. So this gentleman in the upper right corner is one of our scientists who's stationed at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, though depicted now, at this particular picture, he's depicted as being a tripler. But the interesting thing to note about that is we typically try to move our officers somewhere between 3 and 6 years from assignment to assignment. There's a couple of different reasons you want to do that. Some is for for your own professional development. Some of it is to keep you interested and excited. A lot of it has to do with bringing that new technology, bringing that insight into each of these various centers, and also bringing your leadership and moving, changing the leadership so that you actually don't stagnate a particular place and lose your skill sets. What I would hope that you would recognize, what I would hope that you would recognize in any of these slides is not only are we accentuating and leveraging your technical accomplishments and your professional expertise, but what you should recognize is that you're going to be expected to lead a group of persons. You're going to be expected to manage a budget of somewhere between $20,000 to as much as $18 million in my recent experience. Groups as small as 1 or 2 persons to groups as high as 90 or 100. These are some of our clinical accomplishments. Another gentleman who's actually a distinguished ABMM diplomat was part of the outbreak investigation very early on in our current 2 conflicts to describe the Acinetobacter baumannii outbreak. So our clinical microbiologists and our clinical accomplishments since that particular outbreak, we attribute a lot of that success to our Army microbiology scientists. We also have a global surveillance program for HPAI distributed throughout the world, also in collaboration with our Navy scientists in places such as Jakarta, Indonesia, or Cairo, Egypt, sponsored by the GEIS. We have a remarkable repository and a remarkable epidemiology of dengue that our scientists in Bangkok, Thailand have characterized and hold that data. The JBAIDS assays, which Dr. Daly was talking about previously, our Army has actually collaborated with the Air Force and some of our civilian colleagues in Idaho Technology to create those particular probes and primers and test those kits. In addition to the basic science, in addition to the clinical science and those accomplishments that I described, we're just like you. We teach and we train in university settings. Many of us are on graduate programs or graduate committees. Many of us actually just go and teach in the evenings or on the weekends at the university because it's what we like to do. I was privileged enough, I had an opportunity to live and work at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, New York, where I actually taught for 3 years at the undergraduate school there. At the time of the data that I collected for this particular slide, we had 70 microbiologists in the Army. And over the course of 4 years, I counted we had published over 200 articles in peer-reviewed journals. And that's important because it again accentuates we're just like you. We are expected to publish. It is important for our credibility. And moreover, is it important when we show up to places like this, that you all actually know your DoD scientists are on the cutting edge, doing science just like you, asking the tough questions, but on pathogens that academia and industry can't or won't investigate. This middle or third bullet here, I just want to accentuate. I want to accentuate that we have created a 1-year clinical microbiology training program. So all of you who might be in the research world or might think you only want to be in the research world, I can tell you that when the Army calls, they expect you to be able to run a clinical microbiology lab. When the anthrax letters were received and the subsequent confusion and chaos happened, inasmuch as also most recently in the past 2 weeks with the H1N1 and that particular, I won't necessarily say chaos, but let's just say that it was a lot of information being passed around, and there were a lot of samples that the docs were taking that may or may not have been necessarily required. Well, all that backlog happens, and so we needed a program to make sure that our scientists, whether you are of research ilk and that's all you want to do, if the Army needs you, we're going to pluck you out of that laboratory and put you in a clinical lab. So we've created this this 1-year internship to give you that opportunity to do that. So don't be so scared of the clinical lab. It can be a lot of fun. The civil support training course for our National Guard folks. Many of our reserve or National Guard, our reserve microbiologists developed and implemented these civil support training course. Currently, we have 4 microbiologists that are active duty microbiologists that are either in Iraq or Afghanistan, and we have 2 reserve microbiologists that are in either Iraq or Afghanistan. 3 of those scientists are in support of a combat support hospital. Basically, it's a deployable hospital. Another one of our scientists, who's depicted here on the far right of this particular image, is on another team where he is the technical advisor to this team on how we can best support our hospitals with equipping those hospitals as rapidly as we possibly can. If you ever thought you would be a clinical microbiologist in full combat gear, here is one, Lieutenant Colonel Lynn Hamilton, who is also at this meeting, I believe, and be giving a talk Tuesday or Wednesday morning, I believe. Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton just came back from Iraq, and she's now comfortably resting in Hawaii, back at her normal day-to-day assignment. But again, so here's an example of someone doing clinical microbiology in a deployed setting. And I can tell you, with the maturity of the conflict that we're currently at, they are providing nearly exactly the same quality of medical support, laboratory medical support, that they would back home at their normal hospital. It's really remarkable what we've been able to accomplish under these austere conditions. I can tell you she was one very, very busy lady. Now, most of you came here because you wanted to know, how much am I going to make if I'm in the Army as a scientist, right? So I had to bury the slide deep in here so that you would... This particular slide represents civilian scientist salaries of a variety of scientific positions that if you were to work in the Army, these are some of the figures that you can derive if you went and look at your federal government jobs or a number of places. But what I really know you're all here for is, how much am I going to get paid when I join the Army this afternoon? So if you have a master's degree, we're going to direct commission you as a first lieutenant. And it just depends on your service. Some of you, if you had prior service, some of you might get constructive credit. There's all kinds of reasons and excuses you can argue why you get more money. It would vary between $39,000 and $50,000. And generally, if you have your PhD, you'll be direct commissioned to a captain, which is equivalent to 4 years of service, and generally that's about a $59,000 to $64,000. Then what I want to also note is that in addition to that, there's about a $1,000 to $2,000 additional portion of your salary that's non-taxable. And if you were to compare those values to your postdoc salary, I can assure you they're about 10 to 20% higher than any of your postdoc salaries. In addition to the very basic salary, other additional military benefits, primarily I would encourage you to consider, is you're serving your country. You get leadership and training opportunities that you generally or might not get to experience in any other location. You immediately start out with 30 days paid vacation per year, unlike many of your other locations you might go to work for. Of course, worldwide assignments and other additional benefits, to include the new GI Bill. Comprehensive medical care. The Army moves you when it's time to move. These are some locations where we have Army laboratories. I couldn't even begin to list all of them. It would be very, very difficult. This particular slide, I intentionally captured this screenshot because if you were just to Google, or your favorite search engine, 71 alpha microbiology, you would see this map come up. Actually, you would see the link, and you click that link and you see this map come up. But this is where we currently have Army microbiologists placed throughout the world. If you don't want to join on active duty, we actually have Army Reserve microbiology positions that you can actually serve, just like you've seen in commercials, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. We have to apply for grants just like you do. So we have internal funding agencies and we have external funding agencies. We apply to NIH like you do. We apply to other agencies that all of us can apply to, and some of them are internal, such as the Military Infectious Disease Research Program. This particular slide is reasonably busy, and it's done so intentionally. I would encourage you to read it if you're interested, or talk to me about it, but it is because we are going to challenge you beyond your professional and technical capabilities to give you the opportunities to lead and lead other persons. So this slide depicts a number of what I like to call nuggets you will pick up along your Army career as you continue to mature in rank and time in service. So if you'd like to join the military, these are some, whether it's uniformed or civilian. This particular slide represents opportunities, how you can do that. Again, those of you interested in that civilian career, the cpol.army.mil. I want to make sure that I emphasize, if you are interested in being in uniform as an Army scientist, do not go to your local recruiter. Go to the AMED healthcare recruiters, go to that Google, or use your search engine, find 71 Alpha Microbiology, go to my external website, and we'll put you in touch. Don't go to your local recruiter. There's a lot of reasons. Lastly, I'll leave this slide up for you. If you have any questions, here's a number of different websites. I have a variety of business cards and lots of time. I'll be happy to share with you and answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do now. We're going to Dr. Melnikov may go to one end, Dr. Daly to the other, and Colonel Bowden to the third, and maybe you can, if you want to interact one-on-one and ask questions, this is an opportunity for you to do so, and I would urge you to take advantage of this opportunity.